What's going on, everyone? My name is Under the Radar, and welcome to the draft analysis for WBE Season 4. If you did not see the draft stream that went down yesterday, you should have been there because it was a lit time. So first off, I want to do a couple things, and I want to introduce you to the video. I want to say thank you for clicking on it. If you're excited for WBE, let me know down below. Let me know who you're rooting for, because realistically, we have a bunch of amazing coaches. So you don't need to root for me just because you're watching this video, but we have some phenomenal coaches. I kind of sort of wanted to explain what Draft League is, my mindset going into the draft, because realistically at this point, I'm one of the veterans. I've been doing this since 2014. This is my 6th year of Draft League format. So I've been around pretty much. I think the only person that can say that they've been around longer than me are Steve and Magnitude. Like, they're the only people from GBA Season 1, and I started back in GBA Season 2. I didn't compete in GBA, but when GBA Season 2 was going on, that's when I did my first draft league. So I've been around forever. And whenever I was going into this draft, it was really weird because it was a limited dex. It was limited in a lot of different ways. So because of that, I was kind of sort of in the mindset of I have no idea what could go early, what could go late, anything. No idea. I could make assumptions, but I was 5th in the draft. And if you don't know, what that means is that I get the 5th pick, and then after I go, 6 through 16 go, and then 16 through 6 go again before I get my 2nd pick. So once we each have a full roster of 10, we then face each other 1 week at a time until we make playoffs, which I'm hoping we can do. That is my end goal. Like, if I make playoffs, I'm super satisfied. After that, it's just candy, and I'm super proud of myself after that. But so yeah, I was 5th in the draft pick, which meant that I didn't expect to get anything super busted. And as you can see, I got Dragapult, which is arguably one of the best mons in the format. I was expecting this to go like first few Pokemon, but Wolfie got Dracovish, Duncan got Aegislash, Joey got Corviknight, I think Envy got Gmax Grimmsnarl. I think it was something like that. But with me being 5th, I was able to get one of, if not the most potent wall breakers, sweepers. It's super amazing. It has phenomenal move coverage. It has a blistering speed at 142, really good mixed potential, really good utility options with Thunderwave and Will-O-Wisp. It has pivoting and U-turn. This mon can do literally anything that I want it to do any given week depending on my opponent's team, and that is what I always aim to get in my first round pick of any draft I'm in. Something that I can immediately, no matter what, without even looking at my opponent's team, throw it on my team of 6, because no matter what, it's going to have a good matchup. I think Dragapult is even better in draft leagues this gen because of the lack of Pursuit. If Pursuit was still in the game, then that would mean that it would be able to be Pursuit trapped super easily. But because there's no Pursuit trap, offensive ghosts, just like Smogon right now, they're going to run the the draft league metagame. I can already see it happening. But the way that I wanted to build around this thing, I kind of sort of wanted to explain that as well. If you don't know how I build or how I draft for draft leagues, I make an entire plan from the start, working around trying to make a single Pokemon shine or a cluster of Pokemon shine. So I will have multiple Pokemon that do very similar things, and then I will draft, I will have potentially 2 Pokemon that do very similar things, and then I will draft everything around supporting that and making sure that those 2 Pokemon, they do very different roles, but they need the exact same support so they both can shine depending on the week and depending on the variation. The way that I like to think of it, since I've been playing VGC a lot, it's basically I try to make a VGC strategy of having 2 modes in a draft of 10. And that's kind of how I went about this draft. And I wanted to start it off with Dragapult, super spammable mon. I'm super excited to use it. I think it has some of the most potential in the entire game. But so next up, I was struggling to make to make my decision, I really wanted to get Gmax Zard. Gmax Zard, I think, is the best Gigantamax Pokemon in the format. I think it is. I think it's stupid. So I really wanted to get that, and I wanted to make that my other mode for this team. But unfortunately, right before me, my boy Numnexus took it. So that really screwed up a lot of my plans. That really hurt how I wanted to do things. So I went with trying a different route. And the most important mon in that next option for me was Sylveon. This gives me a really good fairy type. And it gives me a fairy type that can also beat down the steels because it does have access to Calm Mind, it has access to Curse, it has access to a bunch of different setup options to ensure that I can beat my opponent's steel type, and I can hit them with a really powerful Mystical Fire. If they're a Dragon steel type like Duraludon, because there's 2 Duraludons in the format, in like A-Drive has regular, Wolfie has Gmax, so like Hyper Voice is still going to be hitting like a truck versus those, and I think that this thing has a lot of really good support to be able to beat down both steels, to be able to beat down dragons that might want to threaten my Dragapult, to be able to beat down pretty much anything that my Dragapult doesn't want to do. Sylveon can really hurt them. Even if I'm just running a defensive set, Hyper Voice is still very hard to switch into in this format just because there's so little reliable bulk that it's really spammable. The other thing that I really liked about this is that it gives me Wish Pass. If you don't know how I like to play, I love Wish Pass. The Evolutions are some of my favorite Pokemon in Draft League format. I have used Sylveon and I've used Vaporeon extensively. There are 2 Pokemon that every single draft I consider drafting one of. No matter what, it's just they do things and they live so many hits for no goddamn reason that they shouldn't ever live, but they live them somehow, and that makes it really valuable for me. It gives me Wish Pass, which I always find myself realizing that there's a lot of walls that are really good that don't get access to reliable recovery. So having Wish Pass always makes it to where they're now a little bit bulkier, they have a little bit more longevity with them, and it makes it really nice. But Sylveon, start to a Dragon Fairy Steel Core. I think it is the one of the best fairies. Actually, no. It is the best fairy in the format until Togekiss gets Roost. Then I think Togekiss will take over as the best. Just because I think Togekiss has the ability to flinch everything down while also being stupid bulky, while also having the nasty plot setup threat. Super good Pokemon. But until then, Sylveon will rule the fairy metagame, in my opinion. So, next up, there was a couple things that I wanted to do. I could get my Gmax here, which I did end up doing, and I ended up getting Gmax Lapras. So, remember how I said I like to build a team and I like to support everything? Like, I like to draft things that can support different modes of a team. Gigantamax Lapras literally does that to a T. It supports a team no matter how I want to do it. Setting up screens or setting up Veil with Gigantamax Lapras's Gmax Resonance literally makes it to where I can set up Veil without having to use Hail and hurt my own Pokemon. So this gives a lot more viability to Dragon Dance Dragapult. What holds that back the most is the fact that it's too frail to live multiple hits. Can't Dragon Dance up too much. But behind screens, it can Dragon Dance up pretty much for free. And with its Blistering Speed stat, I don't have to run a bunch of speed, which means that I'm able to then run a lot of bulk. The bulk combined with screens gives DD Dragapult a really good opportunity to beat down my opponents in a bunch of different ways. Another thing that this allows me to do is it allows me to have a really bulky core. I already know the steel type that I wanted, and having that behind screens combined with Sylveon with Wish Pass, it gives me a really good defensive backbone. And since we do have a way of working around the timer, I was okay with having a really good defensive backbone. Otherwise, I was going to draft a completely hyper offensive team, and I was going to try to go with it. So Gigantamax Lapras. There's also a bunch of really interesting sets. During the Galar beginnings, there was a lot of like weakness policy sets going around because you Gigantamax, you get a lot of extra bulk. You take an unbelievable amount of hits. You get a +2, and then you have 3 +2 max attacks firing off, and you can set up screens with one of them, which means you can take another hit afterwards and take hits even better. And in this generation, it got access to Life Dew. While it doesn't heal 50%, it only heals 25%. You'd be surprised how often this Pokemon takes less than 25% from a hit, especially if it's trying to 1v1 walls that don't have the best recovery. This Pokemon can literally 1v1 them with Life Dew only healing 25%. So very, very, very good Pokemon, very reliable. It is able to support no matter what method I wanted to go about my team from week to week. It is able to support it, and that was realistically the only thing that I really wanted from my Gigantamax Pokemon. If it wasn't going to be my massive setup threat or my massive sweeper threat, I wanted it to be able to support everything. So next up, I don't have any hazards at all. I don't have a grounded poison. I don't have a grass type. I don't have anything. So because of that, I wanted to make sure I got the best one. So I got Roserade. If you don't know why I think this is the best one, this Pokemon, in my opinion, literally has no switch-ins. It has more switch-ins now because it can only touch steel types, but even then, it hits like a truck. It is so strong. And it kind of sort of forces in steel types. And if it forces in steel types, that means that I can just kind of sort of set up hazards on steel types. And as long as they don't get rapid spin, then I'm fine. I can toxic spike to my freedom. I can spike to my freedom. And then I can also save this thing to be able to break through bulky waters. Bulky waters are some of the worst things to break through. And things like Milotic, things like Vaporeon, things like Toxapex, being able to just break through them with like Choice Specs Roserade is super nice. It is super strong. It's actually at a really decent speed tier as well for the team. I believe it's 90. I haven't used Roserade in so long. I miss this Pokemon, to be honest with you. Yes, base 90. I am so good at this game. Really good speed tier, but the biggest thing that I wanted this for was a grounded poison that also gets access to toxic spikes and spikes, and that's all I could really ask for. Really good speed def at base 105, meaning that I can take special hits really well. But this thing, okay, so I like having teams that can force in things, and I can almost manipulate my opponent to do what I want them to. Every single time that I have Roserade in, they're going to want to bring in their bulky steel. Every single time that they bring in their bulky steel, I'm going to want to set up a layer of spikes on them. I'm going to want to set up a layer of toxic spikes on them. Once they set up with their bulky steel, I want to go into something that can switch into their bulky steel, that I can take the hits from really well, that I can pressure, and things like that. No matter what, if I get damage off on a bulky steel, and let's say I am running DD Dragapult, they're weakened now for DD Dragapult to just win. So, very good way of pressuring bulky steels for Dragapult, but it is also a really good fairy killer for Dragapult. Very good way of just having a nice insurance that makes fairies second guess on whether they even want to come, because Roserade can pretty much switch in on them, blow them back with a Sludge Bomb, and then they're in a big trouble. So very good manipulation piece, very good hazards piece, and I really like that. So next up, I wanted to get the one Pokemon I wanted in the entire draft. Didn't care what else I got. I wanted this Pokemon. And the reason why I wanted this Pokemon specifically is because it is my favorite Pokemon in the new gen. It's literally my mascot, and that is going to be young Obstagoon. This Pokemon, holy crap. So first off, let's talk about the amazing aspects of this thing. This thing is a phenomenal wall breaker. With Guts, it gets some of the best coverage to be able to hit almost everything. Gunk Shot, Body Slam, Night Slash, Ice Punch, it gets Seed Bomb, I believe. It gets some really amazing coverage. But on top of that, it also gets access to some really good utility moves. Obstruct is phenomenal. Being able to lower your opponent's defense by 2 stages just by clicking Protect is awesome. Gets access to Parting Shot, which gives me another way of pivoting. Right now I have Dragapult with U-Turn, Sylveon with Baton Pass. This with Parting Shot, meaning that I'm able to Parting Shot out of this, go into a DD Dragapult, go into a Calm Mind Sylveon, go into some of my other really big threats that I have coming up, and I'm able to just power through. This thing has some amazing abilities, or it has some amazing move pools, but the other really good thing that I loved this for is that it has access to Defiant, meaning that I have a good spin blocker in Dragapult, and if they're going to try to defog on me, I can just drop in my Defiant Mon. I can get a +2 in attack, and let's say I'm Choice Scarfed +2 attack. You're now having to switch in to an Obstagoon at +2 attack, and that's not easy to do for a lot of teams because it is so threatening. This Pokemon, I think it has a lot of potential to do so many different things. It actually has some really good bulk too at 93, 101, and 81. So with Wish Pass, I'm able to keep this thing healthy if I wanted to run a more bulky set, and that's exactly what I wanted from my team. Is I wanted to be able to have multiple different ways that I could run everything. So I also think that dark typings are one of the most important typings in this generation because with how many things got access to stored power, if you don't have a dark type and your opponent has a really good setup threat that can use stored power, you're going to get swept by it every single time. If your opponent has a Reuniclus and you don't have a dark type, you're going to get swept by stored power. They're going to Iron Defense or Acid Armor, they're going to Calm Mind, they're going to recover, and then they're just going to spam stored power versus you, and you're going to lose every single time. So having a dark type ensures that they cannot run mono stored power, and that's like that is absolutely huge for any draft. So I'm super happy. I'm super happy with Obstagoon. So once I got Obstagoon, I wanted to start dipping into the C tier, and here's why. Right now, I have one B tier left. There's not anything in B tier that I realistically wanted. There wasn't anything that I needed. But in the free tier, there are some amazing Pokemon that should not be in the free tier. Or C tier. It was free tier whenever we drafted. And I wanted them. I did not want anybody else to have access to these Pokemon. So the first Pokemon that I wanted another Pivoting Mon. I kind of wanted another Water Immunity because Wolf scares me a lot. He's literally won 3 times and he has Dracovish plus Tailwind. So I wanted another Water Immunity to scare that away. And I wanted another thing of being able to just automatically threaten bulky waters. So I went with Heliolisk. I've used Heliolisk before, one of my favorite offensive electrics, being able to both U-turn and Volt Switch, depending on what type of team my opponent has. If they have a ground type, I can run U-turn. If they don't, I can run Volt Switch. Really, really good. It can also beat down ground types, which not many electric types can do this generation. Without the access to hidden power, things like Jolteon can't touch ground types. Things like Raichu can, yeah, because it still gets Surf and Grass Knot. Manectric cannot. It can hit him with a flamethrower, but that's about it. Boltund can because it gets access. No, it doesn't get access to Ice Fang. Boltund can't really. So I wanted to make sure that I got an electric type that could touch ground types. That was like one of my big things. This thing gets access to Surf, which means I can hit them very hard. Base 109 special attack, meaning that it can hit ground types pretty hard. And that's realistically all I wanted from my electric type, to be able to pivot around, force in electrics. Force in grounds. I pivot around. I can drop in my Lapras. I can drop in my Roserade, and I can start breaking through things that way, depending on what they bring. So that was the whole idea behind Heliolisk. Love this electric type. It is by far one of my favorites. Next up, I wanted to get my Steel type. I didn't want to let it wait too long because it is the best Steel type in the C tier, in my opinion. And it is also one of the coolest Steel types because I've seen this thing sweep in so many different ways, and that is Steelix. So, remember when I said I wanted a Steel type that I could benefit with Wish Pass, and also was nearly impossible to kill behind screens? Here we go. So, Spadef Steelix, I used this, I believe, when did I use this Pokemon? Was it last season on my Snake team? No. I don't think it was it? It might have been, but either way, I have this really, really good bulky Steel type now. I have a ground type. I have a Stealth Rocker for once. It is my only Stealth Rocker that I drafted because Stealth Rockers were so few and far between once I got my big 3, so I couldn't afford any more Stealth Rockers, which is the biggest weakness of this team by far, is the fact that Steelix is my only Stealth Rocker. So I'm pretty much forced to bring it every single week, but this Pokemon is phenomenal. Having access to Body Press is stupid. I've seen So many people sleep on body press. It is stupid. It is stupid. This Pokemon is so cool. You run Iron Defense, you run body press. It's so hard to switch into it. And I love that. It's also really good at running Sheer Force Life Orb. It's also really good just running Sheer Force in general to be able to power through things. It is able to reliably break down bulky fairies as well. So if I have, say, Obstagoon forces in bulky fairies, I can Parting Shot out on them, drop in Steelix. They either take a Heavy Slam or they just don't take anything from Steelix, or I drop in Roserade. Very good Steel type. Absolutely love it. And it got access to Dragon Dance this gen. So 1 week I will be running Dragon Dance, Iron Defense, Body Press, Steelix to be able to boost up my defense, boost up my speed, and then the attack doesn't really matter. I guess I could run Rock Polish. Yeah. I'll run DD, Rest, Sleep Talk, Iron Head. Oh yeah. I will run that set 1 week. That is fire. Very good Pokemon. Love it to death. It is a very good bulky backbone. And this pretty much, aside from one of my next picks, pretty much solidifies my bulky core of Lapras, Sylveon, Roserade, Steelix. So that's really cool. So as of right now, I don't have a Pokemon that I can just click buttons with. And I don't really like that. I like being able to have a Pokemon that I just drop in. My opponent cannot have a switch into. Like, it is physically impossible. I've had Pokemon in the past like Darmanitan that can 2-hit KO bulky waters. I've had Pokemon like Superior, which can beat its counters with like Subseed, so I can just drop it in and beat its counters. So I wanted to have something like that, and I wanted to make sure that I got another new Pokemon, because as you can see, I only have 2 so far, Dragapult and Obstagoon. So wanted another new one, so I went with Sirfetch'd. Sirfetch'd I was iffy about, but after looking into it, this is another amazing Pokemon with Scrappy, meaning that ghost types are not able to switch on this thing because it can go ahead and it can just click close combat versus them. It also has Steadfast, I believe, right? Yeah, so if it flinches, it is able to get a +1 speed boost. This Pokemon does not have a switch in the entire game. If I run Choice Banded Close Combat, I drop this thing in, I get a kill every single time. Even things that quad resist it, if it's Adamant Choice Banded Max Attack Sirfetch'd Close Combat, it even 2-hit KOs some things that are 4 times resisted. It is absolutely phenomenal. I love this Pokemon. Super excited to use it. And what I think is really cool is that this is another Pokemon that kind of sort of forces in bulky fairies or bulky psychics and can take advantage of them if I'm not banded. It does get access to Knockoff and Poison Jab, meaning that it can actually beat down the things that try to switch into it, which is really cool. I love this Pokemon, and I think it fits really well on the team. I think it fits really well on the team. So these next 2 picks, I'm sure a lot of people thought that they were memes. I'm not memeing. These are very serious picks. I've tested them. I made sure that they could work. And I know for a fact that they are going to be deadly in some matchups because I drafted them. Because I saw at least 3 people that I could bring them against. So, first up, I went with Drifblim. Gives me hazard removal. Right now, my hazard removal consists of Sirfetch'd, I believe. I believe that's all my hazard removal. So, Heavy Duty Boots is one of my favorite items in the game, obviously, because I also think hazard removal is pretty overrated. I've never been one to think that I need to bring hazard removal. It's just something to have just in case. I feel like I should be able to play around hazards, and I plan on out hazard stacking my opponent anyway. So, Drifblim gives me Defog. It gives me Strength Sap, it gives me Will-O-Wisp, it gives me really good options. But on top of being a really good wall, because of access to Strength Sap now, it also gives me a really good sweeper. If I'm able to set up screens and drop this thing in and it has weakness policy, what I'm able to do is I'm able to take a hit, activate the weakness policy, get a +2 in attack, spam acrobatics. strength set my opponent. Because of Unburden, I will be super, super fast, and I can do a bunch of different things. Typically, whenever people see Drift Blim, they're not going to want to hit it with a not super effective attack. They're not going to want to just like not hit it with a knockoff. They're going to want to like they're going to want to hit it as hard as they possibly can. So it's a very, very, very good sweeper. Really like this Pokemon. I'm super excited for it. I already know for a fact that I'm going to bring it to over half my games. Love this Pokemon. Absolutely love it. But it also gives me a secondary spin blocker, which was another really big thing behind it. Because I don't want to have to switch in my Dragapult on certain rapid spinners. I would rather be able to switch in Drift Blim to spin block and then deal with it that way. So really, really good all around, really good synergy with the rest of the team. And then the last Pokemon that I wanted something that was kind of how do I word this? I wanted a Pokemon that people wouldn't take seriously, but is really good. And if you know anything about me, I tend to draft middle stage evolutions for starters, and I tend to love them because people sleep on them and because people don't expect them to do damage. They become some of my favorite Pokemon ever. I did it with Monferno, I did it with Croconaw, I did it with Servine. I've done it with a bunch of middle stage evolutions. And Raboot is no different. Base 94 speed, base 86 attack, I'm sorry. This thing has access to Bulk Up. It has access to Sucker Punch. It has access to Flare Blitz, Gunk Shot, High Jump Kick. It has access to Electro Ball, just like Cinderace, and it also has access to Agility. This Pokemon has a lot of potential. Base 84 attack. For reference, Obstagoon has base 90. Dragapult has a lot more, but it is almost just as strong as Obstagoon, almost just as fast, and with a Violet, almost just as bulky. It is very, very, very good. So the other thing that I really, really liked about Raboot, gives me my fire type, which I think is super important. It gives me a fast fire type. And I have a lot of Baton Pass on this team. You can Baton Pass stats in this league. I have, I believe, Agility Baton Pass, Bulk Up Baton Pass, Stockpile Baton Pass, Calm Mind Baton Pass, Curse Baton Pass. I think that might be it. I have almost every way of setting up plus Baton Pass. I think Dragapult also gets Baton Pass. I even have DD. Yeah, I even have DD Baton Pass. So I can set up in so many different ways and Baton Pass them to different threats that I think, hopefully, it'll add a new layer of dimensions. And Raboot, I'm super excited for. I know for a fact I'm bringing it to at least 4 games. I've already looked at the matchups. I already know who I'm bringing it against. It is so unbelievably cool that it has base 94 speed, 86 special attack, really good coverage, and with like a Life Orb, it's actually pretty strong. With an Expert Belt, it is pretty strong. And I'm hoping that people sleep on it because it's such a cool Pokemon. So as you can see, that is the entire team. I pretty much built it in a way to where I have a lot of manipulation pieces. Raboot forces in bulky waters. I can U-turn on them. I can drop in Heliolisk. Heliolisk forces in bulky grounds. It forces in bulky steels. I U-turn on them. I drop in my Surfetched. I click Close Combat. Once I click Close Combat enough and bulky fairies are gone, my Dragapult just wins. That's kind of the way that I forced the entire team, was to make it to where I can pivot around everything enough to where I can safely drop in Surfetched. Once I kill everything with Surfetched, Dragapult wins. And if, you know, people are going to see that by looking at it anyway, and that's how I wanted to draft the team. I wanted to draft it to where I can just drop things in. I can pivot around enough. That's not a secret. That's just the way that the team works. And I'm super happy with it. I love it. I love this team. I think it is one of the best teams that I've ever drafted. And I'm super excited for it. If you guys are super excited for it, please make sure to leave a like down below for me. Let me know what your favorite Pokemon is, because I'm going to be naming everything after you guys, my subscribers, because I've grown a lot since Sword and Shield came out, and I kind of wanted to say thank you by naming things after you guys. So leave a comment down below what you guys want to be named after, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.